And we're back, folks, here with another show in your Uncle Yo. And I got a guest for you today, Frank Rich, who's a guy I met at a seminar a few years ago, and we've stayed in touch and been pretty good friends. And he's got a very unique story and a very awesome service that he provides for young men. And it's about helping young men get off of porn. Right? I mean, that's the foundation of what you've been doing here all these years. Is that right, Frank?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, so for the last 3+ years, really been leading the conversation on the podcast, and then early 20. So it's interesting, man, because, you know, I overcome my addiction, which I'm sure we'll get into maybe some of that here. All I want to do is I want to tell everybody about it. Like getting on the other side of this thing, I was like, everybody needs to hear this. And that became the Superhuman Life, which, you know, we're 146 episodes in. We've had you on a couple of times, but out of sharing my story and out of having regular conversations, the need to help others came out of it. So for the last 2+ years now, I've really been focused on building and scaling our coaching company to rebuild recovery. So we have books, courses, group coaching, one-on-one coaching, you know, really helping men. So we've pivoted, man, because back in the day, it was only helping men overcome pornography addiction. I didn't know what the hell I was doing back then. I was like, yeah, I've overcome this thing in my life. I think I can help you. But as I got into the work, I'd realized it's like, hey, you actually don't need to overcome porn. You need to become a better man. Yes. And in the process of you becoming better, you'll take care of the porn problem. So Our mission at Rebuild Recovery has become, we help men become better men by quitting porn first and then rebuilding their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like the way I started with workouts. And it's like you have this insertion point, this place where guys need support, but then it opens up a whole world. And it really becomes becoming the strongest version of yourself, because you can't have one without the other. It's a holistic process. But my question to you, man, is like, so what's the big deal? Porn is just watching sex on a screen. It's free. Why would anybody want to get over doing that? Why would anybody even pay to figure out how to stop watching sex on a screen, bro?
Yeah, man. And I think the way that you phrased that question answered itself, right? Like you're watching sex on a screen. So why do you want to be a spectator to one of the most intimate acts that you can participate in? You know, when you think about neuroscience and how the brain works, so what fires together, wires together. And this is one of the biggest problems we're seeing with a lot of the young men that I've worked with. So we've had guys as young as 18 in our program. I've worked with men as deep into their mid-60s. Those guys have a little bit different of a problem. Once you're kind of past 40, like it's a little bit different of a problem we're attacking. The problem with the young men, though, is they've been brought up and raised in a culture where sex is taking place and they sit on the sidelines as a spectator. You know, if you were trying to, you know, become the greatest quarterback in the NFL, you wouldn't just watch game tape. You'd watch a little bit of it. And that's what I'm saying is go watch porn to learn how to have sex. But you need to get the reps in because you need to get conditioned and build those behavioral patterns. So why would you want to sit on this? I guess I would answer your question by asking the question back is why would you want to sit on the sidelines consuming sex instead of learning how to be a man that can create deep, meaningful intimacy in all areas of his life?
Well, how is it any different than somebody who watches, you know, football game, right? They know they're not going to be a professional football player, but they're entertaining themselves. It just, it's fun. It feels good. I'm playing devil's advocate, by the way. It's fun. It feels good. What's the harm? Really, that's my question is what's the harm, Frank? Why? Why stop?
That's a great question, man. And, you know, I don't ever try to tell anybody what to do with their life. So the men that we work with, the men that we help come to us seeking help, you know, like we could address this. We could attack it a couple different angles. I mean, we could address it from a heart perspective, you know, obviously biblically as well. You know, is it a sin in God's eyes? Absolutely. Should you not participate in these things? Here's the thing, man, is people will put that front out there. It's like, oh, it's no big deal, man. I'm just doing it. Like, I really enjoy this. You ask that enough questions, you spend enough time with that individual, you'll get to the root of it, that they're probably ashamed of what they're doing. Or here's an interesting follow-up question, right? So you have no problem with what you're consuming. let's pull up your browser history right now, man. Let's look at actually what you're into. Because here's the thing, man, is most people these days are consuming pornography that if they were in the room while it was taking place, they wouldn't feel comfortable with it. So nobody needs me to tell them why pornography is bad for them. They already know. And anybody that's putting a front out there, that is them avoiding truth in their life. And that would be a whole different conversation that we could potentially get into. But yeah, man, I think most people know. But my mission has never been around trying to convince somebody that porn is bad in their life. Once they're ready to get it out, though, I'm the guy that's going to help them.
What complaint do these men come to you with, though? The ones that are wanting to overcome porn, what is it that they are seeking out? Why do they want to?
Why do they want to overcome the pornography in the first place?
Yeah, what makes someone, I've never, God save me, I've never had this issue, but what is that epiphany like one day when you're watching sex and then one day there's this idea that maybe I should stop? What's going on inside someone who has that sort of revelation? And then what is the outcome? What do they want? Like, okay, so you stop, now what? What's the big deal?
Yeah, I think the best way for me to answer that would be to maybe share a little bit about my journey and what led me to quitting. So you had mentioned that you and I met back, 5 years ago in 2017 at a Dave Sharp event here in Tampa. So for 6-7 years leading up to that, I'd been, running businesses in the entrepreneurship space. Attending that event I actually wanted to learn from you. So I was getting into the content side of things. I was getting into Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. So for me, my background is in entrepreneurship, is in bodybuilding, achieved some worldly success, I guess you could say, to a certain extent. The moment came for me in 2019 when I had built a body that I wanted to. I'd accomplished everything physically that I'd ever set out to do. I had started multiple businesses and generated millions of dollars in online sales through our companies. I had the $80,000, Audi A8. I dated all the beautiful women in the world. I had done all the drugs. I'd gone to all the parties. I'd done all the traveling. So I'd accomplished all these things. And looking myself in the mirror, it was like, okay, you've accomplished all this, but why are you miserable? Why do you hate yourself? Right. Why are you so unhappy? Why are you depressed? Why are you literally socially anxious to the point where if you go to a party, you have to drink before you even show up just so that you can have conversations with people? It was through that evaluation process for me that was like, well, you have this secret. So anybody consuming pornography, if they're not doing it and they're not sharing it with other people, while they may not be lying, they're holding truths from the people in their lives. And if they're in marriages and they're in relationships, and they have people that are close to them, withholding that truth from them means that you're not giving your true authentic self to the world. And you do that long enough. I mean, we're seeing it with Dan Blazerian, right? Like he's on this newfound journey where he wrote a book now and he's talking about it was, chasing pleasure is not what a man is to do. And he's accomplished all these things. It's really interesting, man. I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see something really cool coming out of Dan here in the next couple of years. Saw a great episode he did on London Real recently with Brian. I think for me, it was the point of like, yeah, you're a fraud to the world. Like you're going out through your content and trying to tell people through building their body that they're going to become the greatest version of themselves. Well, why aren't you the greatest version of yourself, Frank, then? If you have all the secrets to this, why are you unhappy? So it was a deep look inside for me that started first. And then it was opening up and having conversations with people that began to change my life. So I didn't do anything radical at the beginning. I just talked to people that were close to me and said, hey man, I think I'm struggling with this porn addiction. Have you ever done any, like, have you ever struggled with this? Like, what does it look like in your life? And I think hearing a lot of men that I really looked up to and inspired by just accepting me for who I was and saying, hey man, it's going to be okay. Like, you don't need to be the shield, you don't need to be the warrior bodybuilder. Like this body that you built is a shield to the world. And and people understood that. Like, I got as big as I could so that people couldn't hurt me inside. But it was okay because like being hurt is just a part of the journey that we're all on. And I think for me, the acceptance of other men, when I told them that I was struggling with this, just saying, yeah, dude, it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this because I've overcome it as well. So I don't remember the original question, but it was the journey. What are people seeking? For me, it was seeking wholeness. It was seeking completion. It was seeking the greatest version within me. And I realized in order for me to do that, I really had to evaluate everything that I was doing and participating in.
How old are you?
I just turned 39 last week.
39. You're not much younger than me. I didn't grow up with, we didn't grow up with porn in our hands and in our pockets and on our desktops and following us around wherever we go, like the generation now does, right? Like my son, he just turned 12 years old. I talk to him about this all the time. That there are things on the screen that you're better off avoiding. And so just bring it up because it's ever present. I remember the first time I saw a naked girl. It wasn't scrolling through the screens. For me, it was so difficult. I was in the playground at school. This is so weird. I was in the playground at school, and I went just outside the fence. Me and some boys used to go and play in the creek. It was just outside the fence. And one day we're there and we're just playing, and a pretty picture caught my eye. And apparently someone had either left or planted a magazine there, maybe hid it. And I guess I must have been maybe in like 5th or 6th grade. And it was like striking gold. Me and my friends were like, oh, and we took it, we looked through it, and then we ripped out pages, we put it under our shirt, we went home. Like we went home quickly. We went home quickly, and I don't even know what we did about it because I don't even think I was masturbating yet, right? It must have been like maybe 10 years old. So it was exciting and it was confusing all at the same time. But it never became a malignant issue in my life like I'm watching so many young men today because for me, it was just a picture. It was just a picture. And I remember too, like we crumpled it up and like hid it. And so we'd like unfold it and it was all crinkly after a little while, several weeks of having it and looking at it. But with the screens, you just by a couple touches of the button, all of a sudden there's full blown hardcore porn staring you in your face. There's something going on here that is that's contributing to the degradation and the the deleting of masculinity through this, wouldn't you say?
100%, man. And this is, really why we've planted our flag as deeply as we had, and why when I do, go on podcasts or I'm given the ability to speak, I always make sure to preface it with the context. Like when we talk about pornography today, we're discussing internet streaming pornography.
Yeah,
It's a different drug. It's a different animal. The brain responds different. It's a super normal stimulus. It's interesting, Elliott. I want to touch on one thing you shared there, man, because I think it shows, it gives creed to what you talk about, the role of a strong father in the home. So you had mentioned that your introduction came at a schoolyard, like out in a field somewhere. Yeah. So Papa Hulse, I don't know your dad's name, but I know you've spoken a lot about him. He obviously didn't have, a secret stash that 6-year-old Elliott stumbled across. So for me, the introduction came at 6 years old. Being nosy through dad's sock drawer, you pull the socks up underneath that, you realize like dad is hiding some stuff. And I'm not, and I don't want this to come across as like I'm pointing to my dad as the cause for my porn addiction. But what it did do is it showed a young boy that if there's something in your life that you want to hide, it's okay to have secrets from people. And that behavior became a reoccurring part of my life. When my parents split up when I was 15 years old, I was an A+ student. I graduated high school 23rd in my class out of almost 500 kids here in Land O'Lakes, Florida. I was a varsity lettered athlete, multiple sports. Like I was a contributing member in like the school, like institutions and things, like, different things. I was getting awards and getting recognized, but all at the same time, like I was also selling drugs to the underage kids. I was hosting parties at my house. Like I was running a dual life because at 6 years old, I learned that it was okay. Like if there's things that you don't want people to know, you just keep them a secret. So I think it's really incredible what you shared there. And I think it just shows the power of an influence of a strong father. And it's not always what they say. Many times it's how they do or what they do and how they live that is passed down to those kids, because my dad never had the conversation. I love hearing that you're having conversations with your son now. I think that is important. I think we need to get in front of this. I've had Chris McKenna on the show, who runs Protect Young Eyes. He says that when you have kids in the home, pornography should be the most common word. They should know what it is. They should know what it isn't. They should know who they run to when they see it, because there will come a time in every young child's life when their brain or when their eyes see something that their brain is not yet developed to handle. So yeah, this is a problem. This is leading to the degradation of young men. It is hijacking hearts, souls, minds. It's impacting relationships. You know, Abigail Shire, I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She talks a lot about the transgender community. She did a conversation with Jordan Peterson. You can find it on Jordan's channel. Through their work. And I don't want to say that I'm supporting this, but it's just something I think people can maybe begin to explore. And I know you'll go down a hole here with this. Abigail is showing, because the fastest rise in transgenderism right now is in young teenage girls.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, and one of the things that Jordan was able to point to is that these young boys are seeing it at 11, 12 years old, because of age of first exposure is 11 years old. So young boys are seeing it, and they're being taught and conditioned that when you love women, when you want to have sex, that's what you're supposed to do, is what you're seeing on the screen, the hardcore graphic stuff. I'll share another story here in a minute, but I want to drive this point home. The young girls are seeing it as well. It's like, oh, if men love me, this is what they're going to do to me. And when we think about the abuse, all the damaging stuff that is going on in the most popular porn today, right? It's like these young girls are seeing, like, why would I ever want to have a man love me if that's what he's going to do? So not pointing it as direct causation and correlation as to this is the cause of it, but there's something going on psychologically in these young girls' minds that, like, why would I ever want to grow up and be a beautiful woman? Let me just become a man because of what I'm seeing in the world. There's a story that the founder of Fight the New Drug, I'm sure you're probably familiar with their company and organization. So they go out there, raise a lot of awareness, a lot of anti-porn, anti-human trafficking stuff. The founder, Clayton, I heard him speak at an event where he was sharing a story with a family that he knew. Young boy, 12, 13 years old, was excited because he's got his first girlfriend. Girlfriend's coming to the house. They're going to have like a weekend date night at the house. So the parents set up a big projection screen in the driveway, kind of be like a drive-in movie at the house with two young kids. 12, 13 years old is the age of these kids. So parents set them up in the car. They're like, okay, kids, we'll check on you in about an hour. Just make sure to behave and enjoy the movie. When the parents come out to check on him, he's literally leaning over the seat and he's got his hands wrapped around her throat and he's strangling her. The parents grab the door and they pull him out. They're like, Johnny, what the hell are you doing? They're like, I love her. Like, isn't the way that I'm supposed to express my love to her? Because this young boy had been caught up already consuming pornography at 12, 13 years old, thinking that in the act of sex, it's okay to strangle women. So there's a lot going on here, man. And this is why I'm passionate about, obviously, helping the men first that we can help, because we're only going to change the way that it's being passed down to our children when we save the men first.
Have you explored the biological changes and chemical changes in the brain that are associated with the consumption of porn?
Oh, very, very deeply, yeah. So I had Dr. Anna Lemke, author of Dopamine Nation, on the podcast, as well as many other deep neuroscientists. Yeah, so we've explored it very deeply.
And so what happens there?
Yeah, so dopamine, right? Like, everybody thinks of dopamine as a chemical of pleasure, right? You know, you do something, makes you feel good. It's like, that kind of physical sensation, like that sense of like it's dopamine, right? So there's this component of dopamine is tied to pleasure, but dopamine is also a chemical that is directly correlated with our motivation. So from an evolutionary biological perspective, it's there to be dripped out, or God put it there for us, that to keep us moving and progressing towards our goal. So you and I, strength athletes, right? Like, when you're working towards a strength challenge, when you show up to do your lift that day, little hit of dopamine, right? You know, if you're cutting for a bodybuilding show and you opt to choose the chicken and rice over, you know, the donuts and fried food, little hit of dopamine. Decision made in correlation with goals beyond yourself that you're moving towards. So an element of motivation. With pornography, though, what happens is first, second exposure, it gives you a supernormal hit of dopamine. So like a level 10. Nothing in the natural world is going to produce this. So what ends up happening is now your brain correlates it to, if I want dopamine, porn or the consumption of porn will give me a level 10, why would I ever go do anything else? Like, why would I go to the gym? Why would I work on my other goals? So it hijacks our dopamine reward center at a very deep level that puts us in a state where we can only get dopamine, or we only feel good when we're in the pursuit of more pornography, or when we're in the act of consuming it. Because what fires together wires together in neuroscience. So you have these neurological pathways. I don't get too deep into how the brain works, but the neurons are sending signals back and forth. So just constantly communicating. As you and I are talking right now, it's like our brain is firing. Like, Frank said that makes me feel this way. Oh, I'm thinking about this thing now. So it's just constant communication. Well, when it's hijacked through pornography, it's just sending these supernormal stimuluses. You can never experience those normal feelings in the natural world. So this is where I'm sure you hear from a lot of young men, right? Like, they're unmotivated. They can't get out of bed. They can't show up for an interview. They start a job and three weeks into it, they're like, I'm sick and tired and I don't like this. Or they have these goals and dreams that they want. They have ideas, but they can't bring it down into actually like taking steps, because nothing feels good other than sitting there watching pornography. Now, that's the first half of the cycle. The problem, though, is because they know what they're doing isn't right? We talked about at the beginning. Every guy that's consuming pornography, while he may say it's no big deal, he knows deep in his heart, right? Like our moral code is written on our heart. He knows deep inside that there's something wrong in what he's doing. So he's chasing it because it makes him feel good. The minute he's completed with it, though, now he's feeling with guilt and shame. So it creates this constant relapse recovery cycle. So yeah, it hijacks our dopamine motivation and reward center, just makes us want to not do anything other than go look at and consume more pornography.
I was on the call with a priest the other day who does marriage prep for families, people who are planning on getting married. And he does a whole series on masculinity with the men. That's why I was speaking to him. He's a really smart dude. He recommended this book called Cheap Sex by Mark Regnerus. And within the book, he does a lot of different studies. But along the lines of what you're talking about right there, he says that there's a propensity towards depression in men that use pornogaphy, and it was tied to the dopamine thing as well. I guess, now I don't know this scientifically, but from what I understand, that these inordinate or these huge doses of dopamine that happen in the brain then leave you with a low. And so the dopamine receptors or whatever, they don't work properly. And so now you're like not just seeking dopamine hits, you're in like a dopamine deficit.
Efficiency, yeah.
And so then you end up feeling really bad. You can't. It's not like you get the porn and you feel good, and then you don't have that good feeling. It's like you get the porn, you feel good, and then you go into a low. You go below the normal.
Yeah, this is really at the height of Ivana Lemke's work. Like, she talks pretty at length about this, and it's because these neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, every oxytocin, all of them work on so it's a cycle, right? It's a pain, pleasure cycle. So when we do things that bring us dopamine, or do things that tied with goals or motivation or pleasure, hit of dopamine. Well, every hit, because it's on a cycle. So in order for it to return back to baseline, if it's a cycle, you get a spike, it's gonna have to be followed by a dip. So it's normal, normal would be, I'm going to use a scale of 1 to 10. It's not how it works, but I think it's good for explanation purposes. So let's say pornography, because it's super normal, gives you a level 10 hit of dopamine. Going to the gym, because it's aligned with your strength goals, is maybe like a level 3. If you write some sales copy, or you're working on an ebook or maybe a course or product, it's like a level 7, because it's kind of a bigger goal, like outside of yourself, not just your physical goals. So small hits, level 3 for like doing our physical goals. More purpose-driven goals, level 7. Porn, though, is going to be a level 10. Well, if we get a spike to a 3, it's going to be followed by a dip, but it's going to be a dip that's going to be in correlation to the spike, right? So it's going to go below baseline, but for a very short period of time. Well, if you are constantly spiking at a supernormal level, that means those dips into the pain threshold. And pain on a dopamine scale is not physical pain, like I got punched in the face. No, it's the feelings of depression. It's the feelings of anxiety. It's the fear has taken over control of my life. It's the inability to have meaningful conversations with people. So those are the pain things that we're talking about. So level 10 pleasure is going to obviously bring you to a level 10 pain. Now, if you're caught up in a cycle, or you're a compulsive user where it's 3, 4, 5 times a day, you're getting level 10, level 10, level 10, level 10. Well, obviously you're going to be in a deficient state. You're going to be in a deficient state because you haven't given your body ample time to reset, to return back to baseline. So speaking, just giving some, some scientific, support to what you're talking about there. That's why, because dopamine works in a cycle. So every hit that you get is going to be followed by a dip. That's why when we're feeling the urge to go get pornography, instead of satisfying it, instead of seeking the instant gratification, if you could sit in it, if you could endure the pain a little bit of discomfort long enough, that will result in you having some type of pleasure on the back end side of those things. It's just, are men willing to be discomfortable long enough?
It sounds almost like overcoming any addiction. If you're coming off of alcohol or marijuana or even video games. My son, just to be completely transparent, he loves video games. I mean, I liked them when I was a kid too. I never really got hooked on them, but he plays a lot more video games than I did. And so he'll go on detoxes. I'll say, he chooses, hey, I'm going to take a fast. And the mantra is, during those times when he's fasting, is to embrace the boredom, because it's so uncomfortable. It's almost a physical discomfort when you're not getting that high, that dopamine hit that you're describing. Just like anybody coming off of any drugs, would you say?
Absolutely. Now, is he doing that himself, or is that you coaching him?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of both. I make suggestions and offer education, and every once in a while he'll know it's time, and so he'll take a break.
No, it's an incredible level of self-awareness for such a young man. No, this is an important, discussion topic, right? It's because a lot of men, it's like, yeah, I'm going to stop porn, but then they're spending 6 hours a day on YouTube, or 6 hours a day playing video games, or 8 hours consuming TikTok. You haven't actually tried to solve the problem. You just replaced the stimulus from pornography with something else, and oftentimes all that's going to do is it's going to lead you back to wanting more pornography. Because with social media, while butt pictures on Instagram or some videos on YouTube can make you feel good, like you're getting a little bit of pleasure, we know it's not going to compare to what you're going to get on pornography. So your brain is going to trick you into thinking like, yeah, you're coming over here, you're getting these hits. It's almost like an edge effect, right? It's like you're going to get to the edge. Most addicts aren't strong enough to get to the edge without eventually having to fall all the way off the cliff. So I would definitely say for the men that are listening and watching this, and this conversation is ringing true to your life, if you're going to begin to work towards removing pornography, I would advise cutting social media, cutting video games, cutting all that stuff out for a minimum 30, 60 days. Just get that detox. And oftentimes just a dopamine detox, like Dr. Anna Lemke talks about in her book, just 30 to 60 days of just a full reset and cleanse will put you in a position where you can now get back into social media. You can get back into navigating the apps. Obviously, never returning back to porn, but you'll be able to use these things for good, as opposed to having them use you.
The key here, from what I'm understanding, is you got to build up your ability or your tolerance for pain. You got to build up your ability to suffer, and that's definitely one of the things that men today are not facing. According to Father Ripperger, he quotes Thomas Aquinas. He says the definition of effeminacy is the attachment to pleasure and the avoidance of challenge. And so anytime you're avoiding a little bit of struggle, avoiding a little bit of pain, avoiding getting a little uncomfortable, and staying cozy with your little cuddly thing that keeps you feeling good, that you're exhibiting signs of effeminacy. And so for a man to overcome that natural tendency towards effeminacy, it's within all of us. I mean, it started in the garden with Adam. Rather than telling his wife no, he kind of just was like, I'll just go along with you, because it was easier. It's easier. There's no pushback. There's no struggle. In fact, hey, the writer says he just wanted to be with his wife. His answer was, I just wanted to be with my wife. It's almost like the guy who just wants his mommy, wants his binky, wants his weed, or wants his video game, or wants his porn. But we have to allow ourselves to really get comfortable being uncomfortable, is what I hear you saying.
100%, man. I have another friend that runs a similar, ministry as to mine, husband material. He actually talks about, and he's described it as, porn is, your pacifier. Like that's it. And that's what I talked about at the beginning, right? When I realized early on, it's like, I'm not helping men quit porn. Like that's very low level. That's surface level stuff. Like we got to get to the heart of what these men's issues are, and realizing like you're running to pornography, drugs, sex, gambling, video games, whatever the case may be. You're running because there's a hole inside of you. Let's identify what that is, and then let's fill that back up, and then through that you're gonna be able to to conquer this thing. And this is why it's been so amazing with yours and I's relationship, right? It's like we met in 2017, and then in 2019 I started down this journey. I got to watch you from the sidelines going down your fasting journey, we talked a lot about on the first podcast that you and I did. That's become an integral part of my journey. I really feel that me starting fasting. So as a bodybuilder, like fasting was never something I even thought of. Like, what do you mean? I can't not
Taboo.
eat every 3 hours. I'm gonna lose all my gains, bro. What are you talking about? But it was funny. It was actually so I think it was Hurricane Irma, whichever one was in late 2018. We had a hurricane in South Florida. It shut the gyms down for 2 days, and that pissed me off. It was like, what do you mean the hurricane's coming? We can't go to the gym. I was like, well, if I can't work out, I'm going to not eat. And it was something where it was like, I'd wanted to try fasting, and here was like the ideal opportunity for me to try it. So I did a 2-day fast in late 2018. I was like, oh, I feel really good, like not eating. Like I feel mentally clear. I felt a lot better on day 2. So when I started down this journey with porn, so that was before the porn journey. It was like I just got some success with fasting, and I really liked it. When I started, a couple months later in February 2019, fasting became an integral part of the recovery. It became a massive part of my life. I was doing intermittent fasting. I went about 4 months where I was doing 1 meal a day, so OMAD, and I was doing 2-day, 3-day, and I got up to 5-day fasting. And it's now become a part of our coaching curriculum. Early on, it's like you need to go get discomfort in the first 2 weeks, and it's in that discomfort period that we actually have you cast the vision for your life. But yeah, if we can't learn to inject some discomfort, and I think for me, this is why when I decided to quit, I wrestled with this, man, because it wasn't hard. Like I made a decision that I'm removing pornography out of my life, and pornography returning back into my life was never an option. Now, yes, I had been disciplined. I had been putting myself in discomfortable situations for 10 years. Getting sub 5% body fat and competing in a bodybuilding show is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Very uncomfortable. And I think for me, there was a lot of character development and building that came out of that process in my career journey in bodybuilding that led to what I was able to do with porn and porn recovery. But yeah, men today, we live in a microwave society, man. You're hungry, you push a food, you push a button, food shows up to your door. You want some sex, you go on, you swipe left, you swipe right. If you have, 3 looks and 5 personality, like you're gonna score, man. So it's a very easy society that we live in. So we need to be able to inject some of the discomfort into our own lives.
There are people that believe that pornography is in fact a weapon. And if you ever get a chance to watch some of the videos of E. Michael Jones when he speaks about libido dominandi, it was a tool used to soften a society by making the men weak and docile so that they could be easily manipulated and controlled. And he tells stories about how pornography was weaponized during certain wars. And he talks about, the Israeli Palestinian conflict and how, well, once the Israelis took over the TV stations in Palestine, the very first thing that they did was they shut down all the TV stations, put one station on so they could only watch one thing, and just flooded it with 24 hours a day of pornography. And it wasn't because they were trying to help the guys out and make them feel good about being at home. In fact, in part of it, it's so funny because a part of that, it was a war. So people were staying indoors. So you're forced to stay indoors, and you're forced to watch a TV that has only one channel, which is pornography. And they knew what they were doing. It seems almost as if that same exact thing had happened during 2020. Because from what I remember, during the COVID lockdowns, Pornhub had skyrocketed in its in the visitors to its site. And it started doing all sorts of freebie deals and stuff like that, because they knew that all these men were going to be locked in their homes, and they could weaponize this pornography to just make them weaker and more docile and more easily controllable.
100%, man. That's exactly what happened, right? So, we were told to lock down, and then I think within the first couple of days, it was like Pornhub free, free premium porn for everybody while you're isolated and locked up. Just consume all the free stuff that you could possibly want. It's interesting because when you look at society, you look at the world, man, and it's just, you see the transgenderism, you see the drag queen story time, you see the minor attracted persons, aka
You mean
pedophilia.
pedos?
I should go put my pedophile hunter hat on. When we think about like what all this is doing, this is just conditioning in a society that like all of these terms and topics and consumption of all this is just going to be okay. The number one search term in pornography is teen. Like there's no, like there's a direct correlation between that and then the minor attracted or the acceptance of pedophilia. It's all, we're just trying to condition just to make it accepted and make this become the new normal. Now, whatever the bigger agenda is, like that's kind of probably outside of my area of expertise, but no, we've seen it, and once again, it's just given me more fuel to plant our flag even deeper and continue to have these conversations.
In one of his documentaries or interviews, he talks about how this is the whole porn culture has sort of been slowly infiltrating our culture for probably like since the end of the 1950s, and that we've been looking at increasingly harder porn that starts soft, right? So I think about like watching like Beverly Hills 90210 when I was a kid, right? Like in the 1990s. And, if there are reruns or something like that, you can go back and watch them. It was almost like very innocent, soft, sort of, what's the word? It starts with an I, like innuendo, sort of sexual teasing. But now, like during the halftime shows at the NFL, we have like literal nakedness and pornography, and we've got like Lil Nas X giving blowjobs to Satan. It's been a slippery slope. It's been a slippery slope since the 1990s. Where do you think we're going? I have my opinion about what's next, but how far can the pendulum swing?
Yeah, man. And when you understand the brain and science and how all that works, so there was a study done I believe it was done in the 70s out of Stanford, and it was done on butterflies. I don't have the researcher scientist name. I can pull that up if anybody wants it. But they were studying butterflies in their natural environments, and they wanted to get a better understanding of butterfly mating behavior. And so male butterfly attraction is to size of the wings, colors, and I believe the size of the eyes. So there's kind of three indicators. So large wings from the female butterfly, very bright, vibrant colors, and kind of the boldness of her eyes. Those are the physical attractions. What these scientists did is they had created this ecosystem of butterflies, natural habitats, but it was all being able to obviously be studied. What they started doing, they started injecting fake butterflies into this ecosystem. Bigger wings, brighter colors, more vibrant eyes. Over time, all the male butterflies started going to these, and they stopped mating with the real butterflies. So
it's like
there's
anime.
Yeah, right. So it's the desensitization effect, right? With any addiction, like the more you get into it, the deeper and deeper it goes, the more of that substance, the more hardcore of that substance you need. This is why marijuana was a gateway, not because everybody that smokes weed is going to end up a crackhead, but you don't end up a crackhead oftentimes without having gone through some type of other gateway tunnel.
Yeah.
Same things with alcohol addiction, right? If a guy is down in a fifth of whiskey every single night, there's been some progression in that man's life. Obviously his life has gotten worse, but also the need for the drug has increased. So with pornography, yeah, we may, my exposure was to a magazine, was to a 2D image. Like over time though, I was definitely consuming things that wouldn't really be too proud to share. It's because my brain had been desensitized, so I needed more and more and more. So there's no surprise that just the world is more acceptance to sexual acts on TV, like you mentioned Nas X and humping the ground, or blowing Satan or whatever he's doing out there. There's a reason why, because like we're all just accepting this in our life. So where does it lead to? I mean, they're already selling sex robots. They're already, having sex with 3D headsets on. I think we're just going to go further down that hole.
Yeah. I tend to believe that the pendulum is at its peak. I can't imagine it getting much weirder. I think there's going to be a split and ultimately a return to tradition for a lot of people. I mean, even the presence of a person like you, I don't think 5 years ago there were people that were out there helping men overcome. In fact, it was such a shameful thing that no one would even bring it up. I think this generation, part of the problem is this lack of shame. I remember, when I was in middle school and whatnot, and when boys start jerking off, it was a quiet thing. We didn't bring it up. We kind of knew, or we joke on the sly with one another. But now I'm getting emails, or there's entire YouTube channels, and like everybody's just straight out in the open about pornography and masturbation addiction and all these things that at one point maybe it wasn't so good that it was undercover, but now that it's out, it has to be confronted, it has to be dealt with, and I see people dealing with it in a way that is mature and overcoming. And they say hard times create strong men. I think this is the generation that's facing the hard times that are going to create strong men. It doesn't have to be bombs and bullets dropping at your front door to be living in a hard time. We're living in a faithless time. We're looking at a time where marriage and family doesn't work. We're looking at a time where addiction to all kinds of diabolical things, not just drugs, pervade and are ever present in the lives of men and people. So I can't help but to believe or have hope that we're going to be seeing a big turnaround here pretty soon. What do you think?
Yeah, no, and I think I would definitely agree with you. I think I was trying to answer the question in a way that if we don't fix it and solve it, this is where it could potentially lead, right? But I've been at the forefront of leading this conversation for a little over 3 years now, and I have even just seen an acceptance and the willingness for people to talk to me about it, right? So it definitely has grown, and it's become much more accepted. You're seeing more people like myself rise up. You're seeing more, coaches out there. You're seeing more programs. It's been interesting because, we've talked about Anna Lemke's book, a handful of times. Like Dr. Anna Lemke has sat down with Joe Rogan. Million plus people have heard that. She opens up her book with her personal story from a physician, not a physician, but she's a psychologist. So from an expert trained in the field, struggled with a female's version of pornography. So I think hearing it more discussed out there. I have another great friend, Joshua Broom. Josh was one of the he was one of the leading porn stars in the world. He actually won the honor for male performer of the world. And the night he was supposed to get his award, he was at home contemplating suicide. He's now turned his life around. He's got an incredible movement. He's a pastor, huge platform. He's been on Tucker Carlson. So we're seeing the conversation accepted more mainstream now, and it's no longer layered with when I go on a show, hey guys, we're gonna have the taboo conversation that nobody wants to talk about. So I agree with you, man. I'm definitely an eternal optimist. I think we are seeing a turn for the better. And once again, man, not to keep talking about planting my flag here, but that's why I have planted it as deeply as I could, because I did see, and I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today, man. I think if you go back to 2015, 17, even when I was getting into it, man, like it was very taboo. It was not talked a lot. And when it was, what type of men did you think about? You thought about like weak men, like living at home in their mom's basement, like can't hold a job down. He's got tomato sauce on his chin 24-hour days a week. And it's like, for me, it was like, no, that's not the case, man. Like I said, I gone out and conquered some things in the world, man. I had some worldly success, whatever that means to people, it doesn't matter. But from a projection of like, you can have your life together and still be struggling with a porn addiction. That was one of the biggest messages that I wanted to share with the world, because I truly think that it could help a lot of people.
So what do you say to a man who's watching this right now and he's admitting to himself, I think I have a problem. I have a pornography problem. What's the first step to overcoming this?
Well, once you've admitted to yourself, the next step has to be admitting it to another person.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
Where does shame come from? You know, shame is you telling yourself you're a bad person for what you're doing. Guilty is you're a good person that does some bad things. So if you're not talking about it, if you're holding it back because you're concerned with the judgment of other people. So if I say this is this person, they're going to judge me on who I am, not on what I'm doing, but they're going to judge me. That means that I'm worried about my behavior. That means I'm layered with shame. Well, how do we need to get out of that? We have to find the strength and courage to talk about it. So once you've admitted it to yourself, the next step, man, is literally admitting it to somebody else. Now, make sure it's the right person, though. Make sure it's somebody that you feel safe with. Make sure it's somebody that is you can truly trust. It shouldn't be your wife. It shouldn't be your girlfriend. Ideally, a man, older, mentor, coach, pastor, somebody that holds an authority position, and somebody that when you look at them, how they live, the character that they hold, you're like, I want to be like that guy. Because here's what's going to happen is you're going to go shared with him. Granted, he's the right person, and it's a safe place to have the real conversation. He's going to put his arm around you and say, you know what, E? I get that, man. And I dealt with that same thing too. And I had to overcome it in my life before I got where I was today. So once you've admitted to yourself, find somebody in your life that you truly trust and just have that open conversation with them.
That reminds me of a technology I saw recently. You know, for a while there, I was looking for different filters, Wi-Fi filters, blockers for any and every aspect of my home. And I came across one that was about overcoming pornography, but it was associated with a friend. Like the technology would only work if you had someone to be accountable to. I forget what it was called, but the minute you
Covenant
said
Eyes,
maybe that's it. I know that's one of them that I looked into.
I think so. Yeah, that's the one. So that's the only one that I've decided to promote, support. We've partnered with them because of that piece, right? You know, normal blocker, normal software, if there's nobody else tied to it, if you want the drug bad enough, if you put the blocker on, you know how to take it off.
Sure.
So that's why a lot of those things don't work. But when there's an external person, so there's three types of accountability, righty? You have your own personal, like self-accountability. This is your ability to self-regulate, to have discipline, and hold off on doing the things you want now because you know there's a bigger reward waiting for you in the future. So self-accountability. All men struggling with porn need to learn to develop that. There's peer accountability though, too. Like I'm sure this is what they get inside your Kings program. This is what they get in the comment section down here as well. It's like when you're working and you're going down a journey with other men, the peer accountability is incredibly powerful because it's like, hey, I'm not the only one struggling with this.
Right.
If you're struggling with self-accountability though, the only way you're going to develop the self-accountability is through expert or external accountability. So you need somebody that's kind of already transcended this himself, is kind of outside of the struggle. So the peers are in the struggle with you. The external or the external accountability is kind of outside of it, and they can see and navigate, and they can say, hey man, 3 weeks down the road, like you need to be worried with this. When you said this thing this way, I understand what you were thinking, but let's reframe your language here a little bit. So if you want to improve your self-accountability, you need to get some external accountability to help you. And we've all experienced this in our life. You know, you got kids, obviously, and at one point you were a child as well. I was. When we were kids, though, like our parents had to tell us to brush our teeth, right? It's like every night before you go to bed, go brush your teeth. Like, I don't want to. I want to have stinky breath when I go to bed, whatever the case may be. But now, when you're in your 40s, like your mom doesn't have to call you every night to say, Elliott, make sure you brush your teeth. No, you have an internal habit that was created, though, through years and years and years of external accountability. Mm-hmm. So this is why it's so important, man, that we have to get in conversations and community and get some help outside of ourselves. Because if we're struggling with the self-accountability or the self-regulation, the only way we're going to be able to build that and create that in our life is by having some form of external that's going to be able to walk us through, coach us through, and help us in that process of building that up in our life.
So if I could boil this down to 3 steps, just based on our conversation here, it sounds like step 1 is you got to admit you have a problem, right? Isn't that what they do in AA? Hey, my name's Elliott Hulse. I'm an alcoholic, or I'm an addict, or whatever it is. So the very first
the only caveat there from AA, I've spoken a lot about this. I love it. I'm not knocking anything they've done. They've done more good for addiction. The problem I have is the identifying as an addict. I'm a big believer in we have the ability to change our identity, and that is actually sitting at the center of our work as we take you through the process of becoming the man that is no longer addicted to porn. So accept it first, take the responsibility, but don't continue to label yourself as an addict, because that is you putting a limiting belief in front of yourself that you'll never be able to fully transcend it and overcome it and become the man that no longer struggles with it. But yes, personal responsibility is definitely the first step in any transformational change. Is right. I don't like where I'm at right now. I'm the reason that I'm here, but I'm also the person that's going to be able to get me out of it.
And then number 2 would be what you just said about confessing, essentially. Yep. Confess to a mentor, to an elder, to someone that can hold you accountable.
Yep, confession and then the recruitment of the accountability. So that second step is kind of it's a 2-part, right? It's like I just don't want to talk about what I've done. This is a problem with a lot of, like, I see it in in Christianity. It's like yeah, I sinned this week. Yeah, I sinned this week. Well, where's the person correcting you? Where's the person holding you accountable to not do the stupid sin again next week? So just don't accept that you have a problem and admit it, recruit the accountability that now we're going to change this together.
Resolve to sin no more. That's what Jesus says, right? He says, okay, fine, just go and sin no more. So sin no more. So that's it. So we got self-awareness, confession and accountability. And then step 3 is kind of where we started, which is vigilance. Right, your ability to suffer through the detox. Like, you got to be willing to be uncomfortable. That's really where the vigilance comes in. I think a lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to change my life, I'm going to do something great, and maybe they do even tell somebody. But then the how you would say final perseverance. The perseverance is really where the work is done.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to maybe say that a little bit differently, like, it's the difference between being interested in something and truly committed to it, right? A lot of people are interested in having, 1 million subscribers on YouTube, righty? Like, a lot of people would be like, yeah, like, I want to have 1 million subscribers, but are they willing to do what Elliott Hulse did, which was put a video on YouTube every single day for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years? You did it. A lot of people want to be a strongman, but are they willing to carry the load, to endure the suffering? A lot of people want to be sub 5% body fat and stand on a bodybuilding show. Are they willing to do it? Are they interested, or are they truly committed? A lot of men are interested in removing pornography out of their life because they know it's a problem. They're not truly committed to the suffering and the diligence of doing what's necessary. Because those first 2 steps can be accomplished in literally 30 minutes. Like, you can have a radical wake-up moment, take responsibility for yourself, call one of your buddies, confess to him, recruit the accountability. All that can be done in the blink of a moment, right? Here within 30 minutes, you've now accomplished those first 2 steps. That third step may be 3 months for some men. It may be 6 months. It may be a year, depending upon where you're at. It's just how much development do you need to build up in yourself, and how much pain are you going to have to sit in? And a lot of that is just due to how long have you been chasing the discomfort without any form of pain in your life. Once again, for me, I made a decision in a moment. I recruited the accountability right then and there. And then it was 3 months of me rebooting and rewiring. But I had been conditioned to do uncomfortable things. Yeah. I had set out and said I'm going to accomplish multiple big goals in my life. So the failing aspect of quitting porn was never an option. I just had no clue how quickly or how long it was going to take for me to fully overcome it. And for me, it was about 3 months. And
you also mentioned Covenant Eyes as a piece of technology that can be used to help you through that struggle and have accountability from a partner, correct?
Yeah. So Covenant Eyes, the way that works is you go in, you set up your account right then and there at activation. You assign an accountability partner. They get notified, email acceptance, and then you two together will build out their profile. And it's constantly pulling screenshots. I think you put a list of sites that you can't go to, but then it pulls random shots through your browser history throughout the day. And at the end of the day, your accountability partner or buddy gets a report. So I would know where he was. I would know what he was on, what images was he looking at, what videos was he trying to or not trying to consume. So yeah, accountability softwares can be used. I don't think it's the cure-all. I think it's a tool in the toolbox to recovery, though.
And maybe you could share your experience or some of the experiences of the men that you've coached what can someone who's willing to confront this and do something about it expect on the other end? How will their life be better if they overcome pornography addiction?
Yeah, I could give a couple of stories, because I think it depends on where the guy is in life and what he wants to improve. Like, you can improve anything if you're willing to put the work and effort into it. So our program, we've seen guys in 4 months, radical fitness transformation. So I worked with a pastor that came in. He was struggling with belief, because like self-belief, like not belief from like a Christian perspective. Like, he knew, Jesus was the Son of God, and he believed all that. He struggled with, like, can I actually do this? Because I've been trying to overcome this for so long.
Yeah.
So he built self-belief in and of himself. And he lost 21 pounds, got shredded 6-pack, put on a ton of strength in his upper body, because other areas of his life were going really, like, pretty well. Like, he was leading a ministry. He had an incredible family. So for him, when he came in, I said, okay, we need to have something that we need to work on outside of pornography. So in our curriculum, this is where we help you set the goal of what's going to improve. So when we do that fast in week 2, we paint a vision for your life 5 years into the future without pornography. So you and I would sit here today, Elliott, and think, like, if you were struggling with pornography and it's been in your life for 10 years, if you're able to go the next 5 years without it, what could you produce, or what would you want to produce? So your life improves in the ways that you want it to, depending upon what vision you set for yourself. I mean, we can give some of the, like, the general outcomes, like improved relationships, built, the self-confidence and belief in and of yourself. That's probably the biggest thing that men struggle with, is the confidence and belief. So once they begin to get some success in this area of your life, we take that confidence and direct it into your fitness. Boom, you're now confident in your ability to change your body. We take that confidence and direct it into your fitness. Boom, you're now confident you can go out and start the business, launch the business. We've had guys that are online fitness coaches have their biggest months ever. We've had guys launch new businesses over the course of 4 months. Relationships. So you've struggled with building meaningful relationships due to lack of self-confidence and belief. Once we start building some of those traits up in you, boom, we direct your confidence to your relationship. Now you're a man that can go out and build meaningful, lasting relationships. So your life improves in all the areas. It's just dependent upon where did you want to direct that focus, and that's what we'll walk you through in our program. But yeah, I think improved confidence, improved self-belief, the ability to create meaningful relationships, mental clarity, focus, motivation as you reset your dopamine center, a new sense of joy for life, and a sense of peace, because you're no longer keeping secrets from people.
Amazing. And so for my viewers who are watching this and they're intrigued, they're ready to get started, they want to overcome their addiction to pornography, and maybe you're the guy to help them, what resources of yours would you point them to?
Yeah, well, we have a free book. It's a 7-step guide to living life without porn. So those 3 that we talked about, I mean, that's in there. That actually is 1, 2, 3. But we'll take you through 4, 5, 6, and 7, and just kind of extensions. Because once we really narrowed it. Like, once you're on that 3rd step, there's some involvement in there. Like, how do you actually reset, reboot your brain? How do you kind of get these neurochemicals working in your advantage? So the 7-step guide to living life without porn would probably be the best resource for anybody. You can find that at the7stepguide.com. Just put your email in. It's a free download right away. The guys on YouTube, check out our YouTube channel. It's Coach Frank Rich. Every day we drop 1 video and 1 short. And then check me out on Instagram. It's Coach Frank Rich as well.
That's amazing, man. You're doing amazing work as well. And it's been a pleasure to have you here on the show, dude.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man.
You got it. Until next time, Frank.